Welcome to the Leadership Conversations podcast. I'm your host, Jonno White. I'm the founder and principal consultant of Clarity. We are an Australian-based consultancy that works with leaders around the world, and our passion is to invest in people to become everything they're meant to be in order to fill the world with healthy organizations that people love to work for and customers line up to buy from. The goal of this podcast is to invest in you and your leadership. If you're just joining us for the first time, then feel free to check out consultclarity.org. That's our website, consultclarity.org. We have so many free resources on there, the most popular being our 7 Questions on Leadership series. We've had more than 1,500 leaders from around the world in all different sectors give their in-depth answers on leadership, what books they love, what they found most challenging, the most meaningful stories, how they structure their time through the day. That's free, so go and check it out. And we'd love to interview you about your leadership. I believe you have advice from your experience, your context, and your life so far that is important and can help other leaders. It's also a great way to give back. It's free to get involved, and you can do so by going to consultclarity.org/7-questions-interest, or just Google consultclarity.org 7 questions interest and fill out the form that pops up. We have a free resource for you on our website. It's called Leadership Survival Guide. It's a 57-page ebook. It has interviews with 10 world-class leaders, and you can go to consultclarity.org. It's right at the top, and get that today. We also have a daily email that we send out to over 15,000 leaders, and that email contains the highlights, our best content from our podcasts, our blog, my book, the books that we're loving that are out there about leadership. It's also the best way to get access to our masterclasses and workshops before anyone else. And there's also exclusive and limited special options just for subscribers. And you can subscribe by going to consultclarity.org/subscribe. Now, my gift to you is to work incredibly hard to provide the best leadership content I can to invest in you and your leadership. So if you're finding our content helpful, if you find this podcast helpful, then your gift to me could be this. If you do find it helpful, then write a review or rate our content and make sure you subscribe or follow. I can't emphasize enough how helpful that is. It really does help us to get the word out there so we can invest in more leaders to become everything they're meant to be. It also means a lot to me personally when people like you and people in our community share our content on social media. So if you do that, then please do look for me, Jonno White, to tag me, and look to tag Clarity on whatever platform you're on. And our team, including me, I'm always looking to see when people have mentioned us so that I can engage with you. And also we look at sharing content. So if you write something about something we've done, there's also a good chance we'll share that with our followers. So if you could do that, that is a massive, massive help as we try to invest in as many leaders as we can around the world. Last of all, you can check out my book about how to deal with difficult people even if you hate conflict. It's called Step Up or Step Out. It's available on Amazon. You can just look up Step Up or Step Out Jonno White, or you can go to store.consultclarity.org/book and check it out there. I have coached leader after leader after leader, and in more than 50% of the sessions, this topic comes up. How do I deal with this person? I'm finding it really difficult, and I just want to find a way that doesn't blow up, to just to have a difficult conversation, to lead them better. How do I do that? There's a 3-step process that I outline in this book that I believe can help you. Okay, let's get into today's episode of the Leadership Conversations podcast. Enjoy. Welcome to another episode of the Leadership Conversations podcast. Today's guest is Sarah Aguilar. Sarah is the Senior Director of Operations for Austin Pets Alive. Welcome to the podcast, Sarah.
Hi, great to be here.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to chatting with you and hearing some of your story. I've had the great opportunity to work with you already, and I've been excited to have you on the podcast. First of all, can you tell everyone a little bit about your role, but also here's your chance to tell listeners about Austin Pets Alive as well.
I will take every chance I get to talk about this organization. So I'm currently the Senior Director of Operations at Austin Pets Alive, as you mentioned. We are a 501c3 nonprofit based in Austin, Texas, in the United States. And we are sort of the last chance for a lot of animals across the state who are in shelters on euthanasia deadlines. We pilot some really groundbreaking programs to treat medical and behavioral issues, to give pets a chance that they won't get in some of our other under-resourced areas around the state. Many of the partner shelters we work with have maybe, like 10 or 12 kennels. They're outdoors, they're not climate controlled, they have one staff member, they have no veterinarian or medical budget. And so we are taking in animals that would otherwise be euthanized in those shelters and giving them a chance at a loving, happy family. What I'm doing here is oversight of all of the operations, and that is everything from being involved in strategic planning and donor management, philanthropy, things like that, marketing, down to our day-to-day care of the animals that are in our kennels, and connecting and supporting with our volunteers and our foster network. Running a facility, an organization of this size, we take in about 10,000 animals a year, and roughly 80% of those are able to live in foster homes instead of in the shelter environment. And it's just a lot of moving pieces, a lot of things to keep track of between people management and animal care and medical. And there's a lot of things happening, a lot of different hats, I guess.
Yeah, and it's often I think it can often be like that in nonprofits. I think it's one of the biggest challenges for me when I work and when I watch a lot of not for profits is that it's hard because I think what you're doing is some of the most important work. I love animals myself so much, and I just my heart breaks for for just a lot of the different problems and a lot of the horrible things that happen to animals around the world. And so when I come across an organization like yours, I just love what you're doing. But it does mean you're often wearing multiple hats, and so we can find out a bit more about that with your story. Let's jump into your story. I want to start by getting you to look back at your childhood and growing up. What were some of the moments that really shaped you, Sarah, into the person and leader you are today?
I was really thinking about this in the last 2 minutes since you prompted me with this question. I was raised, my parents, I had a pretty traditional family. I was a single child. I was adopted, and my parents were divorced when I was like sixth grade, so roughly middle school. And for my mom, that had been her second divorce, and she really instilled in me this don't ever rely on anybody kind of a mentality, like figure it out, solve the problem yourself type of work ethic, I guess, or independence, really. And so I think that's driven a lot of who I've become as an adult, and a lot of my success really at work has been you know what, don't wait for somebody else to do it. If something needs to be done, get it done, figure out how, solve the problem, work through things, instead of sort of getting paralyzed by fear or the unknown. It's always been a head into it and figure it out. Um, and then I was thinking too about uh, the other side. My dad was very much a sports guy, and so he was a coach of little league teams, some of my teams, and then as I got older, he continued to coach kids. And so not only was there the influence of seeing my dad as a leader and a coach and a decision maker and, you know, coordinator and motivator and all of those things, but there was also the just participating in these team sports where you had to work with people, you had to communicate, you had to strategize. And so that balance of having that real independent solve the problem streak with the you have to work with other people to get things done side has really influenced who I am as a leader and in my personal life and my work life.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. No, I can hear how that whole context has really shaped who you are. What about first leadership opportunities? Do you remember thinking back one of the first times you really think you had a chance to lead a project or be in a leadership role in something team related like a sport, or to cast vision or have people reporting to you? When was that first or one of the first leadership opportunities you had?
Looking back, I would say it was probably like first grade. It was the self-appointed let me show you how to do things, to
Yep.
which, you know, at that time it was mind your own business, don't boss people around. But really that was I had a lot of that as a child.
And so like
When was
what
I officially put in that capacity? You know, I was a captain on many soccer teams and throughout the years, and so I would say it would definitely be either captaining a team or you know, like leading a project, a group project at school.
Yeah, absolutely. And I love the grade one. Um, Thinking back to grade one and going, well, I probably was a self-appointed leader in grade one. I don't know if it was necessarily that popular to be like that, but no, that's great because there are often the seeds of some of that courage and confidence is often there in childhood. So I love that. Love that answer. So tell us a bit about your journey out of school and, you know, from different roles you've had to now. Give us a bit of the snapshot of Sarah's journey.
Oh gosh. So, I started working when I was 14, while going to school, and I I'm a pretty competitive person, and so even like my very first jobs, it was how do I get employee of the month, and how do I make the the customers, like how do I become their favorite staff member, and you know, a little bit probably of being an only child and being a little bit of a attention sort of monger, I guess. But yeah, so I worked in food service and food service related organizations from 14 until, gosh, into my 30s. Everything from washing dishes to being a regional training manager, um, of a national restaurant organization. So this huge variety of things, and I always wanted to learn something else, do something else. I'm very much a routines are really hard for me, and so it's constantly, what else can I do? How can I change this? How can I do something else? Learn something, etc. Um, in my early 20s, yeah. So when I was 20 years old, I was working at a restaurant, a national chain, and they wanted to put me into management, but because the facility had a bar, I couldn't be a manager until I was 21 because you have to be able to cover for the bartenders and things. And so there's just always, I've always had that, like, I don't know if you call it a knack or just a tendency be to move into leadership roles. I've always been a trainer for organizations.
Mm.
Um, I moved from the Pacific Northwest of the United States down to California when I was 24 years old to go run a restaurant on the beach in California, which is like every, young 20 something's dream. And love living in California. It was really a experience moving states by myself at that age. And um, worked for that company, ran a couple organizations, trained a bunch of managers, worked. It was actually, that was one of the first times that I ever really experienced like additional perks of being really good at a job. Um, and I never
Yeah.
had really worked for an organization where there was like bonuses or things like that. And so with this
Mm-hmm.
organization, I actually was able to like go on a trip that was company paid for, like a cruise in the Bahamas, like, and really enjoyed that work. And when I was in my later 20s, I realized that restaurant work or food and service industry work wasn't very meaningful to my soul. And that ultimately I wasn't important to the organization because it would just keep on going whether I was there or not. And so I dialed way back from management and 70-hour weeks, and I went back to bartending and a flexible schedule, and ended up leaving that big organization, and I went to a small mom and pop facility where I could have more impact, and that still kind of wasn't it. And then in 2011 I was in this horrific car accident, and this is not necessarily leadership work experience, whatever, but it
No, no, no.
definitely another piece of
Yeah, yeah.
that
Please share.
shaped who I am.
Yeah, go for it.
So in 2011, I was on my way home from work and had a blowout tire and was on the interstate, on the side of the interstate, and another person stopped to help me. We were out of the car, we were getting some flares, and another car came along and ran into both of our cars instead of going around. And uh, I ended up hospitalized for, gosh, it was about 6 weeks, with broken everythings. Um, and when I was in the hospital, I think nurses and things, when people go through these massive traumatic incidents and they have, loss of physical capabilities to some degree, and they have to, you know, they're unable to walk for a while, and they have to have a feeding tube, and all of these things that the medical professionals tend to see people have a pretty um, sort of sad attitude about things. You are the victim of this traumatic incident, and you've potentially lost things in your life, and things have changed forever, and so it's very easy to struggle with adapting to that. And um, during that experience, I just remember I kept telling them, like, well, I'm alive, must be something I'm meant to do in the world. And I remember the doctors just being like, I can't believe that you have this attitude. And um,
That's
when
incredible.
I got out of the hospital, I'm sorry.
Oh, just saying that's incredible. I like actually I'm really interested to know how did you do that, because that is uncommon to be able to go through that and have such a positive attitude.
I mean, I wasn't dead. Like, literally, that was it. I should have been. And to come out of it and be like, well, I'm not dead. That, like, there's a reason. And I'm not a real spiritual or religious person. And this is, not the place to have that conversation anyway. But I don't, I, I just feel like there's something I needed to do. I didn't die for a reason. I should have been dead. They thought I was. At
Wow.
some point
Huh.
during the initial trauma surgery, I flatlined. Like,
Oh,
I shouldn't, in all things, be here, but I am. And
yeah.
so just being gracious and thankful and saying, all right, like, I have this other chance. What am I going to do with it?
Wow.
And, it took a while to figure that out. Um, I had some, uh, there was about 2 years following the accident where I couldn't work, and I was pretty mobile, but I couldn't stand for very long, and I couldn't sit for very long, and just had a lot of mobility challenges. And I was just at home with space, and I thought, you know what? I have 2 dogs. I have all this space. I'm going to foster. And so I started fostering dogs. And it instantly was like this soul changing moment of, aha, this this is what you're meant to do. It was like fulfilling and productive, and it was both kind of independent as well as team. And it was like this balance of all of the things I think I just had been looking for forever. And I look back and I think, oh, I remember my dad bringing home stray dogs from the airport where he worked. Like, and I'm sure that played some part in that as well. But um I
Mm.
started fostering, and I just was like, all right. And I did this for 2 years. I ended up as the COO for the rescue organization, and doubled their intake, got them to a financially stable position. And all of that was volunteer led. And about the time that it was time for me to go back to work, I was just like, oh my gosh, what am I going to do for work? And didn't really realize that there was ways to like get paid doing this work. And it just so happened that where we lived in California, the local government animal shelter was hiring their first ever foster coordinator. And it was everything that I had been doing for free for a rescue. And I was just like, I get to work for the government, I get a pension, I get to do the work that I love and get paid for it. This is like the best thing ever. And
Mm.
within, gosh, I don't know, it was probably 6 months, and I was sort of fumbling in the job. And my the leadership at that organization was very much, oh, just do stuff, go figure it out. And I didn't really have goals, and I didn't really have um, I had like decision making ability, but not any kind of guidelines as to what might fit within what we're doing. Like, what could I do, what couldn't I do? It was very weird. And I imagine there's people all over saying, gosh, I wish I had that opportunity. I wish I had a boss like that. But for me, it was terrible. It was a real challenge. And I had an opportunity to travel to Texas and to come to Austin to the organization where I work now back in 2015, I think, and to see what they were doing here. And it was like another light bulb moment in my life where I went, aha, this is how things should run. This is how organizations should be working together. This is why play groups or foster and all these different like animal specific programs are so important and how they all work together. And I went back to my shelter in California and I blew up like in a good way. I exploded the foster program there into a so we were housing more animals in foster than we were in the shelter, and nobody there had really been prepared for that. And I looked around, a year or so later, I'm looking around and the leadership at that shelter wasn't going anywhere. And opportunities for advancement were pretty small. And so not only was my career kind of capped out there, but also the impact that I could make. Um, that shelter was never going to go on to teach another shelter how to do something. Um, I had looked at when I had been doing rescue, I'd been to so many shelters that were under resourced and just didn't have anything. And in my role, I wasn't in a place to be able to help them. And so I started looking for something bigger and moved to Tucson, Arizona as the deputy director of a large municipal shelter there. So the deputy director is like the assistant director there. And learned a ton about government and uh, animal officers that are out in the field doing protection work, and really expanded the the breadth of knowledge I had in the field. And during that time, I started having the opportunity to come to Austin and to teach other people some of the things that I had known or experienced or learned. Um, and in there was a brief side moment of 2020, which is like everybody's weird blip, and 2020, where I worked for a, a national philanthropy nonprofit and worked from home, and it was probably the second worst work experience of my life. Not because of the organization by any means, but just I learned that I am not a sit at home on the computer person. Um, I had great pay. I had great flexibility in my schedule. I was at home all day and I was completely unhappy. And it's another one of those where I can hear people saying, oh my gosh, that's my dream. I can't believe that you were unhappy. But I really learned like I have to be hands-on. I have to be in operations. It's part of what fulfills me and makes me feel useful.
Yeah,
Um,
absolutely. No, that's
so
valid.
yeah, and then so about that time that I was reaching my total burnout of this job I didn't love, um, I Austin Pets Alive was looking for uh, a senior director of operations, and it was really this full circle moment, connecting back to 2015 and the first time I came here, and to be able to have the opportunity to now be leading an organization that was so influential early in my career has been absolutely a dream come true.
Yeah, that's
And so now
that's incredible. Sorry, keep going.
I was going to say, so now I have my goal now is to start creating the opportunities for other people to to have a similar journey to what I had through this industry, to move up quickly, to have exposure to as many aspects of it as possible, because we have a shortage of good leaders in this field. And it really is, like I said, it's really been just full circle.
Yeah, well, one thing I want to ask you is, what advice would you give to people who are listening who uh, hear you talk about how much you love, like the aha moments about doing what you're doing, not only the field you're in, but also the type of role you're in? What advice would you give to people who maybe are reflecting and going, I don't know if I'm in the field that really I'm most passionate about? Well, yeah, what advice would you give them?
I, I think one of the challenges for folks is I don't want to jump out of my job that's comfortable to try something else that may not work. So I would say, if you think potentially you're not in the right place, whether it's the right business, uh, the right type of work, the right industry, the right even position within it, I highly encourage people to start volunteering and checking out other things. Um, if I hadn't started fostering, I probably would have gone back to restaurant work. I also have an accounting degree, so I probably would have landed at some kind of CPA job or controller of a business, and I would have been miserable because I would have been sitting at a computer. Um, so, or volunteering, whether it's at through social service organizations or environmental organizations or children's, there's just so many opportunities and so many nonprofits out there doing amazing work that need help, and they need help with everything from marketing and design to videography to actual like work, planting trees, or there's just so much stuff. So I think that people I think they underestimate the opportunities of what they could be experiencing and the different things they could be trying out. So that would be number one.
Mm-hmm.
And then my my sort of like the type of work, like doing office work aha moment, really was just figuring out, like, I'm miserable at my job, like what about my job is it, and trying to narrow down, is it the content of the work, is it your the leadership structure, is it that the amount of time that you're spending at a computer, or maybe conversely it's the amount of time that you're spending away from a computer. um, you know I realized during that time that I was I was very negative, and I was blaming kind of the leadership over the organization, and just kind of fell into this like negative Nancy type of of attitude. And I had to take a step back from that and say, okay, why am I feeling this way? What is it really? And doing that self-reflection can be really hard, especially if you're emotionally uh, caught up in your
Yeah.
discontent.
Yeah, absolutely. No, that makes so much sense. What about great leaders along the way? Are there any moments that spring to mind where you've learnt from other leaders or other people close or far off that have really inspired you as a leader?
uh, when I was, gosh, 18 or 19, working at a restaurant, and my I was like a waiter, a waitress, and the general manager of the restaurant, who is like 3 levels higher than me or something. I couldn't stand him, and I remember writing like lists of all the things that I would do differently when I was in charge. And I remember the day I set my mind and I said, I'm going to be this guy's boss one day. And I'm going to tell him what to do because I can't stand anything about how he operates. And, it turned out that drive actually brought he and I closer together. And he ended up being like my first real business mentor. And I learned so much from him very early. I was early 20s and I learned so much from him about data and organization and follow through and accountability and systems and processes. And I just learned so much from him. And I guarantee if you would have told, 18-year-old me, that guy is going to be like your first mentor, I would have laughed you off the face of the earth.
Yeah, that's so funny.
But
Because what was it about him that that you clashed with so much initially, and ended up being having such a great relationship?
I think it was just a real challenge to my independence and my I tend to have an overconfidence about my decision making, and he would call me on stuff all the time, and I just didn't like it. I was young and cocky and didn't really appreciate somebody telling me I was wrong.
Yeah, yeah, I don't blame you. I think a lot of people, including me, I think I can relate to uh you love the idea of feedback. Oh yeah, I really want to learn, and then you get feedback, particularly as a young leader, and you get so defensive, and so yeah, it's definitely something I think everyone has to grow in. What about aha moments for you as a leader? So are there any moments that spring to mind that are ingrained in your memory because of a win you had, or with the team, or a decision that you made or someone around you made, or a mistake, like a leadership lesson aha moment in your career so far that sort of springs to mind?
Yeah, I'm going to give you two because one's going to tie back to what we were just talking about. So when I was farther into my career and I looked back at this particular individual who had been such a positive influence, I was able to realize that part of what worked, why that ended up being successful, was he was able to recognize something in me and to be able to shift the way that he was interacting in that relationship and to um, provide me opportunities to improve and to learn. And so I I try to do that now when I have people that are particularly challenging, employees that are particularly challenging. I try to say, okay, how can I shift what I'm doing to create an opportunity for this person to love their work or to be heard or to have control over a project or something, and create opportunities for growth. I think all too often we give up on people and we're quick to say like, nope, you're a trouble child and I don't have capacity for that. Um,
Mm.
and then really one of my most recent aha moment has actually been through our conversations and through Working Genius. And um, I have a very strong discernment, and could not understand, like didn't have the language, I think, to talk about what was going on in my head and how I was interacting with people. And like I knew I was a hole poker. People would bring ideas and I'd be like, well, what about this, and hole poke, and what about that, and that's not going to work, and this is great. But what really was enlightening for me was that realization that there are times when that is not productive and really ticks people off. That, you know, when you're in the final stages of something, it's not the time to be poking holes at what they did 3 months ago. And knowing that that's a real thing. It's not just a Sarah thing, but that's a real thing that there are multiple people experience and learned, and that there was language for it, and there was to listen to somebody describe, that's what I do, and this is what it looks like, and this is when it's appropriate, and this is when it's not, and this is what makes people crazy. I was like, oh my gosh, that's all the things. I do that. I get it. I understand why people get so frustrated with me. And it's really it's created the opportunity for me to acknowledge that I do that and create the space for my teams to call me on it and say, this is not the time for that. And instead of them just being frustrated, and we all now understand that that's what I'm doing and that's the way my brain works, and that there are times when it's not appropriate, and it's absolutely okay to say that. And so having that, the I just keep saying the language around it, having the ability to explain it to someone and to self-acknowledge it and create the space for other people to acknowledge it in you. It was really impactful, and shifted uh, a lot of communication for the better within our teams.
Yeah, that's so good. I love that you shared that because I think that's been a big aha moment for me as well. Because I mean, my number one working genius, which I highly recommend anyone listening to go and check it out. It's such a great framework or assessment to understand yourself and how you get things done. uh, my number one is wonder. And I realized, and wonder sits right at the top. Like, wonder is before we even invent something, we question things. And when I realized that, I went, oh my goodness, how annoying have I been without realizing it? Because I was operating in my sweet spot. Just like you said, it's like discernment isn't necessarily the right thing at the last minute when you're about to, launch something and you just need to land the plane. But wonder is even more frustrating. And I realized, oh my goodness, I have done that so many times, not only in work, but in life. I think of my wife, Liz, and just how often we need to be in tenacity mode getting something done. And Jonno's in Wonderland. I found that so helpful as well. So that really resonates with me. Just going and having that awareness is so liberating because it's like it just gives you a handle to go, wait a second, am I automatically going to discernment because that's my sweet spot? Or for me, am I automatically going to wonder and questioning and seeing potential when right now it's actually not the time for that and I need to purposefully switch modes?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
So as we wrap up, Sarah, I've got a few Leadership Express questions for you. Are you ready?
All right, is this like hot potato?
Yeah, hot potato. Love it. Maybe I should recall it leadership potato or leadership hot potato. I like hot potato.
Leadership potato.
Leadership potato. I think that's going to catch on. I think that's definitely the a runner for an alternative name. Hot potato. Love it. Leadership Express. First question: what is a book that you've gifted to other people or recommended a lot to other people?
Oh gosh. Um, I used to recommend a lot uh, The Speed of Trust,
Yes.
which is probably now considered an old school business book, but um,
No,
Speed of Trust. Let's go
I
with that.
love that as a recommendation. That Speed of Trust, is that Covey? Maybe Speed of
Yeah.
Trust. Yeah, the reason I love that is it's funny how these things like trust comes up so often, even on the podcast when I'm chatting with leaders. It's like, what does it all come back to? And people will talk about trust. So sometimes the old sort of older books ring true. So no, Speed of Trust. That's a great recommendation.
Yeah. Yeah,
What's
and
a
then I'm going to give you a
Oh yeah,
hold on, I'm going to give you an industry specific one in case anybody is interested in learning
yes, please.
about animal things going on in the animal world. There's a book called My Dog Eats First, which is all about um, people who are experiencing homelessness and taking better care of their pets than they are themselves, and really highlights, at least in the United States, a lot of what's happening with mass evictions and people experiencing homelessness and losing their stability, and how they are often judged as not sufficient. They're not good enough to be pet owners, and really kind of flips that on its back.
Yeah, great recommendation. What was the title again?
My Dog Eats First.
My Dog Eats First. I like that as well, because it's like there's a really popular leadership book at the moment called Leaders Eat Last, and so it's like it's
Hmm.
it's almost like a the sort of
Parallels are
yeah
uncanny.
parallel to Simon Sinek's Leaders Eat Last, but it's focused on your industry. No, that's wonderful. Thank you for that recommendation. And I know there will be a lot of people who listen to this podcast who are very passionate about your industry and are probably really either keen to get more involved or find out how they can support you, which I'll ask about in a moment. Um, okay, another question. What's a great piece of advice you've received in life or leadership? At some point, somebody gave you a piece of advice and it really has stuck with you for a long time.
I got I got to go back to my mom, and I really think it's maybe not the best leadership advice, but it's to never put yourself in a situation where you have to rely on somebody. And I've had a lot of challenges to that, but it's so ingrained in my upbringing,
Mm,
um, and in some ways it's good. Um, you know, I feel strongly that um, organizations or teams shouldn't be held sort of hostage, for lack of a better word, by an individual. Um, and so I like to kind of adapt it to um, make sure that not any one person holds
yeah.
all of the cards. You know.
No, I enjoy polarizing opinions, so you're more than welcome to share that. And no, it's good. I think it's the thing that it really rings true for me. I was chatting with someone recently, just talking about how I guess that perspective, like what you shared, I think it's very true for organizations. If you're in the CEO role, it's having that awareness as well of the where you're sort of leveraged as an organization. And for people who are very passionate about people, sometimes that's not our natural focus. Not only in terms of relationships, but also financially, which I'm sure is meant in the quote as well from your mum. So I think yeah, it's really interesting.
Yep.
Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I could have gone with something like keep it simple, stupid.
Yeah, always a good one. We can always simplify. Most good things are simpler. No, that's great. Thank you for sharing that. Okay, what about a bit of a fun one, or you can pick something serious? What is a movie or TV show that's really influenced you?
Oh, boy. I'm suddenly not a leadership potato fan. Um, let's see.
I know, Leadership Potato.
you know,
It had such a great start.
um, this feels like kind of cliche, but I'm going to go with Red Dawn. The original
Ah,
Red Dawn
yeah.
back in the 80s.
You know what? I've never watched Red Dawn.
Really?
Yeah.
You'll
Yeah,
watch it and you'll be like, oh yeah, that's Sarah.
it's one of those ones where I've actually had other people recommend it, not on the podcast before. So I love that it's a recommendation, but I've never watched it. So Red Dawn, is it a comedy?
The original one.
The original one?
No.
No.
No, it is Russia invades the United States in the 80s and a bunch of high school kids defend their town.
Ah,
They like
okay.
escape into the mountains and somehow outsmart an entire army.
Yes. Okay, I'll have to check it out. I must have been thinking of something else. Red Dawn. I haven't seen it, and I'll add it to the list. Thank you. So good. I've had so many great recommendations. I always try to throw that question in because one of my favorites was someone who said, ultimate switch off downtime. They love the Golden Girls, and I
Yeah.
just have had so many great recommendations, serious and fun ones.
Okay.
So.
You want to know what
Yes.
my I guess sneaky dirty pleasure, whatever it is,
Yeah.
TV show is like 60s television game shows.
Ah.
Old,
60s television game
cheesy.
shows. Yeah.
They
Like
didn't
what?
like the technology was terrible. Super Password.
Super password. Okay, I haven't heard of that, but I love the specific niche that's so good, or niche as you say there. Okay, last question
Yeah.
as we wrap up. This has been so much fun. Last question: if you could only give one piece of leadership advice to a young leader, what would you say to them?
You are better than you think you are, and you don't know nearly as much as you think you do.
Oh, I like that. You're better than you think you are, but you don't know nearly as much as you think you do. So good.
Yeah.
It reminds me of one of my favorite John Maxwell things that I've heard him say, which is saying that when you're starting out and in leadership, people will underestimate you. But I love the second part he says, but as you become more successful and rise through the ranks, and then at some point, maybe you become very successful, people will start to overestimate your abilities. And I love that because it's that picture of, hey, when you're young, people are going to underestimate you, and as you actually get better and better, and that's the challenge then. And I see this, it's a big challenge for a lot of CEOs. When you have a lot of power, you can pick your own feedback, and so one of the big challenges is, hey, people are going to overestimate how good you are, so you actually really need to keep yourself grounded as you get older too. So it's kind of a similar vein to what you were to your advice there.
Yeah.
And I love that wonderful thought to finish the episode. I do want to give people the opportunity, like, how can people find you online on LinkedIn or Twitter, or anything like that, or and the other one, or Instagram, and the other one is, how can people support Austin Pets Alive if they're really interested in supporting the work that you're doing?
Yeah. So thank you for that. I personally, I'm on LinkedIn, Sarah Aguilar with Austin Pets Alive, and the organization, you can find us on all the platforms. We function as Austin Pets Alive, which is austinpetsalive.org. We are on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, LinkedIn. I don't think we have a Snapchat, but we also have our national arm, which is American Pets Alive. And through that, we spread the work that we're doing and teach shelters across the globe how to save lives with minimal resources and make an impact in their communities. And again, you can find Austin or American Pets Alive on LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram.
Brilliant.
And then the website is austinpetsalive.org.
Thank you so much. Make sure, I want to thank our listeners for tuning in. And if you are really passionate about animal welfare. And, make sure you do check out Austin Pets Alive and American Pets Alive. And don't forget, I also have the Jonno White Leadership Podcast and the Leadership Question of the Day podcast, two other places you can go to continue to invest in your leadership. But I want to finish today by saying a massive thank you to you, Sarah, for being such a fun guest. It's been so much fun hanging out and getting to know a bit more of your story. Thank you for sharing vulnerably about your journey, including, like you mentioned, the car crash, which is 100% leadership relevant because of what a significant life event for you. So I really appreciated you sharing some of those sort of moments about your life, and for giving some great wisdom as well. So thank you for coming on the podcast.
Thank you so much for creating the space for this. It's been really, really, as you said, it's been fun.
Well, I hope you enjoyed that episode of the Leadership Conversations podcast as much as I did. If you're joining us for the first time, don't forget to check out consultclarity.org. That's our website, consultclarity.org. We have so many free resources on there, including our 7 Questions on Leadership series. We've had more than 1,500 leaders from all over the world in all different roles, in different industries, answer these 7 questions on leadership, and leaders give these in-depth answers around how they spend their time, a book that's been significant for them. It's just a gold mine. It's completely free to access, so go to consultclarity.org and look for that. We'd also love to interview you about your leadership. I believe your experience, your life, your context means that you have advice on leadership that other leaders can learn from. Yes, you. If you're going, not me, well, no, I really believe you would have something to add. So if you're looking for a way to give back, it's completely free to get involved. And we would love to interview you through the 7 Questions on Leadership. You just go to consultclarity.org/7-questions-interest, or Google consultclarity.org 7 questions interest and fill out the form and get involved. We have a free resource on our website called the Leadership Survival Guide. It's a 57-page ebook, 10 world-class leaders giving their thoughts on leadership, and that's completely free. It's available on our homepage, consultclarity.org, right at the top, so make sure you go and get that and download it today. And we have a free daily email that you can subscribe to. We send this out to over 15,000 leaders from around the world. And it contains the highlights of content from our podcasts, our blogs, our books we're reading. It's got the best content, and it gives you exclusive, limited, early access to our masterclasses, workshops, new products, special offers. It's all for our subscribers. You can go to consultclarity.org/subscribe and join 15,000 other leaders. And my gift to you is to work really hard, particularly through the Leadership Conversations podcast. I have been blown away by the quality of the leaders, and I'm learning as much as anyone in doing these interviews. So I'm having a great time. And my gift to you is to keep lining up the best leaders I can to invest in your leadership. Your gift to me, if you're finding this helpful, there is something that you could do that would help us out massively. And that is to write a review and to leave a rating for our podcast or wherever you're watching or listening to this. I can't tell you how much that helps us out. Also, subscribe or follow. It really does make a difference in helping us to help more leaders become everything they're meant to be. Another thing that means a lot to me personally is when I see our community share our content. So if you do share this or any other piece of content on social media, then thank you, and please do that. And look for me, Jonno White, or Clarity, and tag us in your post. Our team is always looking for posts to engage with from our community, and there's also a chance that we'll share your content to go beyond and share it with our followers. Last of all, you can check out my book. It's called Step Up or Step Out: How to Deal with Difficult People Even If You Hate Conflict. I wrote this book because 50% of the coaching sessions I have with leaders, this topic comes up again and again and again. And it's this idea of, how do I have this difficult conversation? How do I lead this person better when I'm finding them difficult? Or in some cases, you look and you say, I think I might be leading a difficult person. They're just quite difficult to lead, or I'm finding them quite difficult to lead. So there's a 3-step process that I unpack in Step Up or Step Out. And the amazing thing, and I've literally done this myself, and I've heard it anecdotally from other leaders as I've coached them, is that if you follow this process, you will see that person step up and change their behavior or make a decision, which is to step out some of the time. 95% of the time, people will step up or step out in just 4 weeks. And I stand by that. It's you have to read the book to understand, but I really do believe in it, and I've experienced it firsthand. It works. So you can go to Amazon, look up Step Up or Step Out Jonno White, or store.consultclarity.org/book. Well, thank you so much for listening. We're going to be back with a new episode next time of the Leadership Conversations podcast. And I hope today has helped you to take another step towards becoming the leader you're meant to be. See you next time.